It's funny how a single, insignificant choice can unravel your entire existence. For me, it all started with a detour on a Tuesday afternoon. A Tuesday, the most forgettable day of the week. I was driving home from my soul-crushing data entry job. The kind of job that makes you feel like a background character in your own life. The rain was relentless, a thick, gray sheet that blurred the world into a watercolor mess. It was the kind of rain that seeps into your bones and makes you feel perpetually damp. My usual route was blocked by an accident, forcing me down a series of side streets I hadn't explored since I was a kid. This part of town was a ghost of its former self, a collection of forgotten storefronts and decaying brick buildings. It was here, tucked between a boarded-up laundromat and a check cashing place with a flickering neon sign, that I saw it. Yesterday's treasures. The thrift store was a relic, a time capsule of discarded memories. The air inside was thick with the smell of mothballs, old paper, and something vaguely metallic, like old pennies. Dust motes danced in the weak light filtering through the grimy front window. I wasn't looking for anything in particular. Maybe just a distraction, a momentary escape from the monotonous loop of my life. I browsed through aisles of mismatched furniture, stacks of faded National Geographic magazines, and shelves of porcelain dolls with cracked faces and unnervingly vacant eyes. In the back, crammed into a dark corner, was a small section for electronics, a tangled mess of yellowed cords, bulky VCRs, and a few dusty video game consoles from my childhood. And that's when I saw it. It was a single game cartridge, sitting alone on a shelf. It was for the original Nintendo Entertainment System, a console I hadn't touched in 20 years. The cartridge itself was odd. It was a flat, matte black, unlike the standard gray plastic of official NES games. There was no label, no colorful artwork, no publisher logo, just a single word, crudely scratched into the plastic with what looked like a pin. Exist. A strange curiosity, sharp and insistent, pricked at me. I was a gamer, always had been, from my early days with the NES to the hyper-realistic virtual worlds of today. Gaming was my sanctuary. This cartridge felt forbidden, an anomaly. The store owner, a skeletal old man with rheumy eyes and a cardigan that had seen better decades, didn't even seem to know he had it. He squinted at the black cartridge in my hand, his face a roadmap of wrinkles. Found something, did you? He rasped, his voice like sandpaper. How much for this? I asked, holding it up. He waved a dismissive, bony hand. $5. Can't even guarantee it works. I paid the man, the $5 bill feeling strangely significant in my hand. Driving home, the black cartridge sat on the passenger seat. A silent, dark passenger. The rain hadn't let up. The rhythmic thump-thump of the windshield wipers seemed to be counting down to something. I couldn't shake the feeling that I hadn't just found the game, but that it had, in some strange way, been waiting for me, back in my small, sterile apartment. The silence was deafening, broken only by the hum of the refrigerator and the drumming of the rain against the window. My apartment was a testament to my life, neat, orderly, and utterly devoid of personality. It was a place to exist, not to live. I dug out my old NES from a box in the back of my closet. It was a clunky, gray box, a fossil from a bygone era. Hooking it up to my modern, sleek flat-screen TV felt like an act of technological sacrilege. I blew into the cartridge, a ritual ingrained in every child of the 80s, and slid it into the console. The plastic door clicked shut with a satisfying finality. I hit the power button. The red light flickered on. The screen, however, remained black for a few moments longer than usual. There was no cheerful theme music, no flashy company logo, just a low, almost subliminal hum that seemed to vibrate through the floor. Then, 2 words appeared on the screen in simple, white, 8-bit text. Press start. I pressed start. The screen changed. It was a simple side-scrolling game. The graphics were rudimentary, even for an 8-bit system. The player character was a small, generic sprite, a simple collection of pixels that could have been anyone. The background was a sparsely detailed street, with blocky houses and repetitive tree sprites. It looked like 1,000 other games from that era. The objective seemed simple enough. Walk from left to right. There were no enemies, no obstacles, no power-ups, just walking. I guided the little pixel man down the street. The sound design was minimalist and unsettling. There was no music, only the repetitive, soft tap 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 of the character's footsteps on the digital pavement. After a few minutes of this uneventful journey, I reached the end of the street. A small, pixelated house stood there. As I approached the door, text appeared on the screen. Level 1. Home. I walked the character through the door. The screen went black, and then a new scene loaded. It was the interior of the house. And that's when the first wave of unease washed over me. The layout was familiar. A living room with a brown, L-shaped couch, a television set against the far wall, a staircase leading up. It was a crude, 8-bit replica of the house I grew up in. My childhood home. I dismissed it as a coincidence. These old games often had generic suburban house layouts. It had to be that. I moved the character around the room. I could make him sit on the couch. I could make him walk to the pixelated window and look out at the repeating tree sprites. I guided him up the stairs. The second floor had a short hallway with 2 doors. I chose the one on the left. The room loaded. A single bed. A desk with a small, blocky computer. A poster on the wall. A jumble of pixels that was meant to represent something. My breath hitched. That was my room. I knew it with a chilling certainty that defied logic. The placement of the bed, the desk, even the poster, as indistinct as it was, felt like it was supposed to be the one of a Lamborghini Countach I had on my wall for years. My heart started to beat a little faster. This was impossible. It had to be a trick of the mind. My brain filling in the blanks, projecting my own memories onto these simple graphics. I guided the character to the desk. Text appeared. Check the drawer. My hand trembled slightly as I pressed the action button. A new text box appeared. You found a folded piece of paper. It's a drawing of a spaceship. I dropped the controller. It clattered against the hardwood floor. My blood ran cold. When I was 7 years old, I was obsessed with drawing spaceships. I had a whole notebook full of them. One particular drawing, my masterpiece, I folded up and hid in the back of my desk drawer. I had told no one. I had completely forgotten about it until this very moment. How could this game know that? I stood up and paced my small apartment, my mind racing. I felt a growing sense of dread, a feeling of being watched. I looked at the black cartridge still sitting in the console. Exist. What did it mean? My rational mind screamed at me to stop, to turn it off, take the game out, and throw it away, smash it with a hammer. But another part of me, the part that was drawn to the mysterious and the unexplained, was hooked. The curiosity was now laced with a potent, addictive fear. I needed to know more. I needed to understand. I picked up the controller, my palms sweating. I exited the room and went to the other door in the hallway. This was my parents' room in the game. It was simpler, less detailed. A large bed, a dresser. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary. I felt a small flicker of relief. Maybe the spaceship drawing was just a bizarre, one in a million coincidence. I guided my character back downstairs and out the front door. The screen went black. Level 2. School. The new scene loaded. It was another side-scrolling level. But this time the background was a long, brick building. A school. Again. The layout felt unnervingly familiar. It was the elementary school I had attended. PS 113. The flagpole in the front. The specific arrangement of the windows. The playground off to the side with its blocky swing set and slide. The objective was the same. Walk from left to right. The soft tap 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 of the footsteps returned. The only sound in this silent world. As I moved the character across the schoolyard, I noticed other small pixel sprites in the background. Other children. They were static, unmoving, like digital statues. They just stood there, watching my character pass. It was incredibly eerie. I reached the school's entrance. The doors opened automatically. The interior was a long, straight hallway. Lockers lined the walls. Classroom doors, all of them closed. I walked my character down the hall. The silence was heavier here, more oppressive. The only sound was the echo of my digital footsteps. Halfway down the hall, one of the doors was slightly ajar. As I approached, a text box appeared. Peek inside? Yes. No. My finger hovered over the A button. A cold knot of dread tightened in my stomach. I knew I shouldn't. I knew that whatever was behind that door would only pull me deeper into this nightmare. but I couldn't stop myself. I selected yes. The view shifted. I was looking into a classroom from a low angle, as if peeking through the crack in the door. The room was filled with the same static, unmoving child sprites, all sitting at their desks, all facing forward. At the front of the room stood a single adult sprite, the teacher. But something was wrong. The teacher sprite was distorted. Its pixels seemed to be vibrating, shifting, as if it was struggling to maintain its form. It was taller, thinner than the other sprites, and its head was just a chaotic jumble of black and red pixels. And then, it turned its head, slowly, unnaturally. The chaotic mass of pixels swiveled to face the door, to face me. There were no eyes, no face, but I felt its gaze. A cold, malevolent intelligence. I slammed the B button, backing out of the view. I made my character run, the tap 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 of his feet becoming frantic. I ran to the end of the hall and out the back exit of the school. The screen went black. A low hum vibrated from the TV speakers, deeper and more menacing than before. Level 3. The lake. My hands were shaking now. I had to get up, walk around, splash water on my face. The apartment felt smaller, the walls closing in. The rain outside had intensified, lashing against the window pane. It felt like the storm was a part of the game, an extension of its atmosphere. This was no longer a game. It was an intrusion, a violation. This thing, this black cartridge, was somehow accessing my memories. Not just the simple facts of my life, but the deep, buried things, the feelings, the fears, the spaceship drawing. The unsettling feeling of being watched by my peers. The nameless dread I always felt in that long school hallway. I should have stopped, I know that, but the game had a gravitational pull. It knew my secrets, and the thought that it might reveal more, that it might hold some key to understanding my own life, was a siren's call I couldn't resist. I returned to the couch. The screen showed the new level title, The Lake. My stomach clenched. I knew exactly which lake it meant. The level loaded. The aesthetic was different, darker. The sky was a deep, starless purple. The ground was uneven, a mess of dark green and brown pixels representing a forest floor. In the distance, a large body of black water shimmered under a pale, pixelated moon. The sound was different, too. The footsteps were now a soft crunch crunch crunch. The sound of walking on dirt and leaves. And in the background, a low, constant chirping of digital crickets. It should have been peaceful. It was anything but. This was the lake my family used to visit every summer. But it was also the place where a boy from my town, a kid named Kevin, had drowned when I was 12. I was there that day. I saw them pull his small, pale body from the water. The memory was a scar, one I had tried to bury for decades. I guided my character through the pixelated woods, towards the shore of the black lake. The chirping of the crickets was hypnotic, unnerving. It felt like they were counting down. As I got closer to the water's edge, I saw a small sprite standing there, looking out over the lake. It was another child sprite, just like the ones at the school. Static, unmoving. As I got closer, a text box appeared. "He's waiting for you." I felt a surge of pure terror. I knew who he was supposed to be. I slowly moved my character to stand beside the other sprite. For a long moment, nothing happened. Just my character and the ghost of a drowned boy, staring into a digital abyss. Then, the other sprite turned its head. It had no face, just the same blank pixel configuration as the others. But a single line of text appeared above its head. "Why didn't you help me?" The question hung in the air. A digital accusation. I remembered that day with sickening clarity. I had seen Kevin struggling in the water. I was farther down the beach. And for a frozen moment, I just watched. I was a kid. I was scared. I didn't know what to do. By the time I ran to get help, it was too late. The guilt had been a quiet companion my entire life. The game knew. It knew my deepest, most shameful secret. Suddenly, the other sprite started to glitch. Just like the teacher, its pixels vibrated violently. Then, it slid forward, into the black water, and vanished without a splash. The text box remained. "Why didn't you help me?" I threw the controller. "This isn't real," I yelled at the empty room, my voice cracking. "It's just a game." But I didn't believe my own words. I was sweating profusely. My heart was a drum against my ribs. I felt a presence in the room with me. A cold, watchful entity that had been born from that black cartridge. The screen flickered. The level was over. The screen went black, the low hum returning. And then, new text appeared. Not a level title. It was a question. Are you enjoying the game, Alex? It knew my name. My name, Alex. It had never been entered. Never been asked for. It was just known. That was the breaking point. The final thread of my composure snapped. This wasn't a game mining my memories. This was something else entirely. Something that was connected to me on a fundamental level one couldn't comprehend. I scrambled to the console and ripped the cartridge out. My hands fumbled, and it fell to the floor. I stared at it. This small piece of black plastic. It seemed to absorb the light in the room. A tiny rectangle of pure void. Exist. I had to destroy it. I took it into the kitchen. My mind a whirlwind of panic. I grabbed a hammer from my toolbox. I placed the cartridge on the tiled floor. The black plastic stark against the white ceramic. I raised the hammer, my arm trembling. I was bringing it down, ready to smash it into 1,000 pieces. To end this madness. But I stopped. A thought, insidious and cold, slithered into my mind. What if destroying the game didn't end it? What if the game wasn't just on the cartridge? What if the game was me? My life, my memories. What if smashing this piece of plastic was like smashing a mirror reflecting my own soul? What would happen to the reflection? What would happen to me? The question held me paralyzed. The hammer felt impossibly heavy. The night that followed was the longest of my life. I didn't sleep. I couldn't. I left the cartridge on the kitchen floor and sat on my couch, staring at the blank TV screen. Every shadow in my apartment seemed to move. Every creak of the building, every gust of wind against the window, sounded like the soft tap 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 of digital footsteps approaching. I felt trapped, not in my apartment, but in my own skin. In my own life. I was the character in the game. I was the one walking from left to right, through levels designed from the architecture of my own past. By morning, the rain had stopped, but the sky was a flat, oppressive gray. I was exhausted, a hollowed-out shell of a man. The fear had subsided, replaced by a strange, numb resignation. I knew I couldn't destroy the cartridge, and I knew I couldn't just leave it. There was only one way forward. I had to see it through to the end. I had to finish the game. With a sense of grim determination, I walked back into the kitchen, picked up the cartridge, and slotted it back into the NES. I powered it on. The low hum filled the room like a prayer to a malevolent god. The screen was black, and then, the text appeared. Level 4. The void. The level loaded. It was nothing. A black screen. My character, the same small pixel sprite, was standing in the center of an infinite emptiness. There was no ground, no sky, no walls, just my character and the oppressive silence. I tried to move, but he wouldn't budge. He was frozen. I pressed every button on the controller. Nothing. He just stood there, a tiny figure lost in an endless digital void. Minutes stretched into what felt like hours. I just sat there, staring at the screen, at my digital avatar trapped in nothingness. The silence was the most terrifying sound yet. It was the sound of absolute isolation. The sound of non-existence. And then, a single pixel appeared in the blackness. Then another, and another. Slowly, painstakingly, pixels began to form shapes. They were chaotic at first, random assortments of color. But gradually, they coalesced. They were forming images, memories. A flickering, 8-bit image of my mother's face, smiling. The image dissolved. An image of my first dog, a golden retriever named Buddy, chasing a red ball. It dissolved. An image of my first kiss, awkward and clumsy, under the bleachers at a high school football game. It dissolved. My entire life began to play out before me in a silent, pixelated montage. Birthdays, Christmases, graduations, failures, heartbreaks, moments of joy and moments of profound sadness. Every memory, significant and trivial, was being dredged up and displayed. It was intimate and horrifying. My life, my entire consciousness, was being deconstructed, pixel by pixel. I was no longer in control. I wasn't even a player. I was a spectator to the dismantling of my own existence. The process was relentless, clinical. The game was showing me everything that made me me. And I had the sickening feeling that it was cataloging it, archiving it. Finally, after an eternity, it was over. The last pixelated memory faded away, and the screen returned to the black void. My character was still there, motionless. The screen went black one last time. The low hum stopped. The silence in my apartment was absolute. And then, the final message appeared. It was written in the same simple, white text, but it felt different. It felt final. Final level. The choice. A new screen loaded. It wasn't a level. It was just text. A single question that burned itself into my retina, into my soul. Do you want to go back to reality? Underneath the question were two options, pulsing softly. Yes. No. Reality. The word seemed alien. What was reality anymore? Was it my quiet, lonely apartment? My meaningless job? The life I had just seen dissected and archived by a haunted video game? Or was reality this connection to something beyond comprehension? Something that knew me better than I knew myself? A cold sweat trickled down my spine. This was the end of the game. The final input, but it felt like the most important decision of my life. What would happen if I chose yes? Would I just wake up, as if from a dream? Would the TV turn off, the cartridge becoming an inert piece of plastic? Would my life go back to its comfortable, predictable numbness? And what if I chose no? The thought was terrifying and, in a strange, twisted way, alluring. To choose no would be to reject the world I knew, to reject my own life. What would happen then? Would my consciousness be uploaded completely? Would I live forever as a sprite in this digital world? Would I become another static, faceless character in someone else's game? Or would I simply cease to exist? My thumb hovered over the D-pad. The choice pulsed. Yes, no, yes, no. I thought about my life. The quiet desperation, the gnawing loneliness, the feeling of being a ghost in my own story. The game, for all its terror, had made me feel something. It had engaged with me, challenged me, frightened me. It had paid attention. What was I really choosing between? A reality that felt like a simulation, or a simulation that felt more real than anything I had ever experienced? My thumb moved. It made its choice. My name is Alex, I think. I sit in a quiet room. The walls are a soft, neutral gray. There is a comfortable chair, a sturdy table. Outside the single, barred window, the sky is a constant, unchanging shade of twilight. There are no birds. There is no wind. 3 times a day, a slot in the door opens, and a tray of tasteless, nutritious paste is pushed through. I have a bed with a clean, white sheet. The silence is perfect. It is a life of absolute order, absolute peace. Sometimes, other people come, men and women in white coats. They are kind. They ask me questions. They ask me about a game. They ask me about a black cartridge. I tell them I don't remember. It's easier that way. But at night, when the only light is the pale, perpetual twilight from the window, I remember. I remember the low hum of the television. I remember the tap 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 of pixelated feet. I remember the final question. I don't remember which option I chose. Yes or no. Does it matter? Sometimes, late at night, I hear a sound, a faint, distant sound that seems to come from the walls themselves. A soft, rhythmic sound. Tap, tap, tap. It's getting closer.